Good day and welcome to Daniel Weekly 37. What day is it today? It's June 17th. I just a couple of hours ago made the 7.43.0 release of curl and uploaded it and did most of the things I think I should do for the release. 69 bug fixes and 10 changes, something like that. 43 contributors. 49 days since the previous release. I think we did a pretty good bunch of stuff for this release. I could mention that possibly the biggest, 10 changes, that's slightly more than we used to do in a single release. So we added a bunch of new options. Some of those are rather obscure, like 2 of the options are for setting service names when you're using GSS API and HTTP negotiate authentication with a server or a proxy. Rare option for most people, but for some pretty important. We also got this new option for the command line. Also another kind of rare, but this is called --data-raw, as in data raw, as in a version of the data option. The data option sends data in HTTP post. And it has some magic markers to allow you to send stuff from a file and whatever. But data raw, it only sends exactly what you type. You can't read anything from a file or anything. So if you're, for example, accepting input from a script and you want to make sure that curl sends exactly that data in the post, --data is not that good since if the data starts with the @ sign, it'll try to read that from a file and it'll screw up your script. If you use data raw, you know that it'll send exactly that. Even if it starts with an @ symbol, it'll send the @ symbol. That was that. And also, as I mentioned before, we did all those, I did mostly. The HTTP2 multiplexing stuff, so that's not accessible from the command line tool, but for libcurl now you can enable multiplexing, and there's 2 new options, that pipe wait I mentioned before, to instruct a single transfer how to consider connections, wait or not wait. And you enable HTTP2 multiplexing specifically for multi-handle if you want to do multiplexing or not. Default is not, as before, to not introduce any kind of weird problems because you're used to some old behavior. But you also need to enable HTTP2 protocols version for your requests to get this going. We're now requiring NG HTTP2 1.00 or later. They're up to 1.02 now, I believe, and they're doing rather fast-paced releases. But they made an API change, so we're requiring version 1 no earlier. And it's kind of, there's no point in using any older stuff anyway. So ditch the old, go with NGH2 version 1 or later, and everything is fine. Starting with this version of curl then 7.43. We also added a scripts directory in the curl tree, and first out, really that might be some interest, is that there's a script for Z shell completion, ZSH, or Z if you want to pronounce it that way. And I also added a new alias for the version, HTTP2 version, just when you request that in libcurl. I'd actually call it now HTTP2, not 2_0, which is the previous symbol which I added back in the days when we still called it 2.0. Okay, those are the changes, and among all the bugs, I would say there are 2 bugs to bother about, except of course if you have suffered from anything in the past, and you could just check if we fixed it. We have 2 security problems. 2 CVE numbers, CVE 2015-3236 and 2015-3237. And the first one, both are not really particularly major. Both are rather subtle and not that dangerous. The first one is an HTTP one, which then affects potentially quite a lot of users. If you're doing a request on a site using authentication, and you see a pattern here, we have lot of security problems are related to authentication in various ways. But if you're doing a request to a site using authentication, like basic authentication, name and password, I want to get this site, here's my blep, get it, and you reset that handle you have your own application, you reset the handle, and you get another request on another portion of that site, the same host, and you want that without authentication, possibly because that's a completely different area of the site, someone else handles that or whatever, then curl would not flush the authentication part of the request. Even though it was resetted, it would still keep the authentication, so it would leak that info in the second request. Fairly minor, since mostly the site is owned by the same people, so mostly kind of harmless. And I think it's a rare use, scenario that you would do it first with authentication, then without. But still, we fixed it. That's the 3236 problem. And the second problem is potentially even more obscure. It is with the SMB protocol, which is that Microsoft how to get data from an old, Samba stuff, Windows protocol. And in the SMB protocol, we're actually, there's a lot of packages going back and forth, and when in one of those packages, when you fairly low level protocol, and when we get data back, the server asks what the client should send back, and it says that I want this data sent back with an offset and a length, and that offset and the length is sent in the packet, and we were just reading that and kind of offsetting that to our current pointer size and length and send that back, which then could be wherever in memory that curl was typically running. So if you would use a malicious SMB server, it could be handicrafted to send back memory that really wasn't supposed to be sent back. A real obscure, and I would say very unlikely scenario, unless someone is making a really dedicated handicrafted attack on your clients. But still, it was a problem found out by Coverity Scan, really nice actually. So that is fixed. Both problems fixed. There are patches on the site. Great, that's it. Speaking of the site, then I did back and forth a little bit during the last week and the week before that, discuss how to redesign or re-polish the site to make it less horrible. And I say this kind of just because I know that a lot of people claim that the site has been horrible or terrible or bad or whatever. I've never experienced that myself, but who am I to tell? I know most of this. I've made most of the site. I'm not the designer. I'm not the web guy. I just made everything available and I put it there and I thought it was accessible enough. But since so many people have kind of said that, ooh, it's not good enough, we can't find anything, it's bad, and tend to laugh when I show them the site. So I kind of realized that it had some potential to improve, or room to make it better. So I did, or I tried to make it better, but as I said, I didn't really experience the problem before, so I'm not really sure if it gets better because I can't really feel that myself. I've tried to have some kind of keywords when doing the new layout, and that is simplicity, remove a lot of options, remove craft to make it easier on the eye, possibly by remove a lot of stuff along the side or so. So it's much narrower, and there's now a top level menu only, nothing on the left side, which also makes it much better to view on like a phone or a tablet or whatever, because the previous one was not at all very good at that, especially because the design was made with tables, and that's kind of how you did it in HTML back in the old days. So it's not any there's no tables anymore in the kind of layouts for the site. Yeah, and I tried to cut out stuff from the menu, so the menus are much smaller, even if they're now on top. So there are much fewer options in there, and especially that is notable in the docs section. And since the docs section is now split up in 5 separate docs sections, just to make sure that the menus are small enough and easier to on the eye and not as confusing. I'm not sure this helps. It's an attempt. I have some other ideas on how to make it even better, but I wanted to get this out to get a feel for this and see what people say and think, and there's not been a lot of reactions. I've had some positive comments and then some negative comments. Mostly, I think people who have been around the project for a while get a bit lost, and some of them lack or miss some of those many options that we provided before. So I'm not sure where to go next, really. We'll see. If you have ideas or suggestions or whatever, throw them out. I also then, as an effect of me simplifying the curl website, removed this video. I mean, my video sequence, this embedded thing from the curl website front page. And that has a very notable effect on these videos being seen by much fewer people. I'm not sure exactly how to deal with that, but of course you who are watching this are now more actually interested in the stuff I'm talking to. You're not just stumbling upon this on the curl website and by accident and click play on it. But on the other hand, I'm missing out a lot of people. I think I'm only on around 100 views on the last week's episode, which normally tend to be around 400 or have been the other weeks. So that is kind of boring. I don't know what to do about that. We'll see. That's it about the week then, probably. I wanted to have a bug of the week. I forgot about adding that to my little schedule here, so I'll just look it up really fast because I have an idea which it is. I wanted to mention the options of the week then first. I mentioned the /data raw option as one of those new options for this release. And then it was kind of, and then I got an option to mention for this option of the week, and that's the --data binary. That's --data binary actually, which is also sending HTTP post, but not stripping out anything from the string. So it'll most typically you'll use it as in, and here are some subtle details. If you use --data at file name, it'll get that file and then it'll strip out new lines and stuff and send that as an HTTP post. But if you use --data binary at file name, it'll read exactly those binary bytes and send that. It'll just not strip out anything that isn't text. A rather minor difference, but if you want to send, for example, if you want to make sure that you send a binary file to over HTTP post, you should use data binary. That's it. The other option to talk about this week is the --disable-epsv. Disable epsv. And epsv is a rather subtle little thing, or fun if you're into that. It's an FTP command, which FTP school. When doing FTP, you set up a separate connection to do the data on. So you have a control connection. You first connect to one port, and you have the TCP on that control connection. And then when you want to do a transfer with FTP, it has to set up a different connection to do the data on. A quirk and a really annoying one, and makes FTP a really horrible protocol. But anyway, that's how it works. And when you want to set up that other connection, you ask the server, open up a port for me, please. Or the other way around, you can also ask the server to connect back to you. But in the case when you want to ask the server to open up a new port for my data connection, the good old command from the 70s or 80s or whenever they created the FTP the first time. In the RFC 959, which is really old, that's the kind of standard FTP RFC. The command is port anyway, and it says, sorry, I'm confusing matters. It's passive, P-A-S-V, passive. So you ask the server, open a port for me, and it opens a port for me, and it tells me which port it is, and I connect to that. But PASV is only IPv4 compatible, because they send back an IP address with 4 numbers and a port in 2 numbers actually, which is because it has 8 bits, and blah. Anyway, the new command to do that is called EPSV, which then is IPv6 compatible, because it basically only reports the new port. So you ask the server, open up a new port for me, EPSV please, and it'll just send back, oh, I'm opening now on port 48, blah blah blah, and then the client will connect to that, and it'll work IPv6 too, because if it's IPv6 it'll just use IPv6. If it was using IPv4, it can just use IPv4. But since FTP is a good old legacy protocols from the ancient days, so a lot of those really ancient legacy FTP servers, well, maybe not a lot, but many or some, who knows, servers, they get bonkers on sending, if you send an EPSV command when it doesn't know about it and it doesn't understand it. Typically a server should just ignore it, and it won't do any harm. We will just try the old command instead, the PASV command, and that's fine if you're using IPv4. But if you're using one of those old stupid servers that go bananas when you use the EPSV command, you can disable it from curl, so it won't use it. -- disable EPSV. Of course, then you can't use IPv6 and passive transfers with FTP. But those old servers then usually don't support IPv6 anyway, of course, since then they would support EPSV. And the bug of the week I wanted to mention, because I also have a fix pending for it, it is the cannot open FTPS encrypted data connection through HTTP proxy. Actually issue 278 in the current curl backtracker. It is when talking FTP, FTPS is just the same as FTP, but doing SSL on the connections as well. And when you're doing the data connection, it then has to open the data connection with SSL. But if you're doing the FTPS through an HTTP proxy, and you do that through, that means you're sending the connect request, an HTTP connect, which basically tells the proxy, I want to tunnel through you. So when you want to tunnel through the data connection to set up the SSL command, we have a regression, since that used to work and at some point it stopped working, and this isn't really a very commonly used feature apparently, and we have no test in the test suite for it, so it has been broken for a couple of versions. And just yesterday, this night, just like 9 hours ago, I fixed that, I believe, so I have a fix pending. I didn't really dare to merge it before the release, since I'm a coward. No, but so I'm gonna merge it really soon. So that's that for the bug of the week. This next week, I'm going to be in Whistler, Canada, with Mozilla. So I'm probably not gonna do a video unless I get very creative and make one in my hotel room or whatever. But maybe I'll do a short one. Don't count on it. This is number 37. I'm gonna do some other Firefox bugs. I've been needing food, and I have some reviews to do in the Bugzilla. So some Firefox stuff, and then I'm gonna merge my HTTP2 push work into curl master, so that we can start working on the push stuff. And then I have work going for the dependency priority options that I'm working on. And I also got this lovely pull request that I want to get into this release next, the 7.44 release with curl, for support for HTTPS proxies. And that's a topic for basically an entire episode of the Annual Weekly, because that's a really lovely feature, and it's going to be introducing a lot of new options and a lot of new weird network traffic setups. Okay, this was 37. See you again then, possibly next week, possibly the week after that. Bye.